Now, this story is interesting for multiple reasons, but let's get into it so we can see what's going on. Because Pusha T had recently did an interview with GQ magazine, and he had spoke out about his relationship with Def Jam and the issues that he had because of a Kendrick Lamar feature. It says here that Pusha T says that Def Jam dropped him and Clips as a group because of the Kendrick Lamar feature that they had. Now, taking a quick look at the album that's set to release, they have this album called Let God Sort 'Em Out. And if you can remember on this channel, I've talked about it a few times. They had a song with Kendrick Lamar. They had a feature with Kendrick Lamar on a song called Chains and Whips. Now, this is speculative at the moment. It says here that this track list is unconfirmed. It's compiled of recent single snippets and song title sourced from streaming services, PROs, and social media. It is purely speculative and has not been confirmed by the artist. It says that they'll update this list soon whenever they can. Now, the official track list is unconfirmed, as they say, but we could confirm that one of the songs that people had talked about was a feature with Kendrick Lamar. Back to the past, at least in 2024, there was an article that was posted that said Clips signed with Def Jam ahead of new album, Let God Sort 'Em Out, the same album that we're talking about, right? It says here, while Pusha T is already signed to the label as a solo artist, the duo have opted to ink a deal with a storied company after their prior albums were handled by a variety of labels, including Jive and Arista. The deal was announced on Monday, October 28th by Malice on Instagram, where he posted a picture of himself in Def Jam's office, standing in front of a TV that said, Def Jam welcomes Clips. I think they had removed the Def Jam photo because it says that it's no longer available. I'm not signed in at the time, but I do remember that they were in the office of Def Jam where they had shared that picture. So I do remember when that was first shared the first time around last year. Pusha T had said to Vulture, he said, I think this is where you get the difference between taste and filler. The music is curated. This is high taste level piece of work. You can only have that level of taste when you have fundamentals down to a science. I think it's been definitely missing. Then there's the competitive aspect. So they talk about signing with Def Jam. They've given their opinions. They've talked about the album a little bit after this, after being signed to them, but it doesn't look like it ended there. It looks like it started going sour. It looks like it started going south because of the relationship that Clips and Pusha T have with Kendrick Lamar. Now, the album is expected to come out in the summertime, July 11, 2025. But like I said in the beginning of the video, Pusha T had did an interview with GQ magazine where he had opened up with the fallout of Def Jam. Because the article we just read, it said that he had signed in October 28th, just about 7 or 8 months ago. The fact that he had a fallout with Def Jam that quick is crazy. Hasn't even been signed to them for a whole year yet, and they already had issues. The things that he talks about in that interview, speaking about Def Jam, he said, if you expected the album last year, the brothers sympathized. So did they. Pusha says they felt confident, proud, and assured of themselves when they presented the music to Def Jam. The label loved what they heard, except for Kendrick Lamar's guest verse on the thunderous Chains and Whips, the final version of the song that Pharrell teases at the Louis Vuitton runway show. And the song Pusha says was the first to come out of their sessions. Don't be fooled by Pusha's interviews appealing for one last guest verse and the Twitter jokes that he went to the GNX tour date to physically walk Kendrick into the nearest studio. K-Dot's verse homework has been turned in for a while now. So this is what I talked about. I thought Pusha T had met Kendrick at the concert. He had went to the GNX tour. I thought he had pulled up there to try to get a verse. It looks like Kendrick had gave him a verse a long time ago. And going back to that song, they brought up Chains and Whips again. But after a summer of beef between their two biggest artists that resulted in a still ongoing lawsuit from Drake, Def Jam's parent company, UMG, blanched at the antagonistic optics of two of Drake's biggest enemies linking on wax. Pusha calls their apprehension stupid. None of the bars in Kendrick's otherwise excellent verse could really be perceived as a shot or even subliminal. It does, however, contain a stellar line. Therapy taught me how to open up. It also showed me I don't give a fuck. And Genius is confirming here that they're referring to Chains and Whips. GQ interview is labeled here, listed here for the song lyrics and Kendrick Lamar's verse. So it seems like Def Jam is starting to choose a side. Even though Kendrick wasn't throwing any subliminals and he wasn't dissing anybody, going based on what Pusha T said, Def Jam still didn't like that Drake's biggest ops, Pusha T and Kendrick Lamar, were going to get on a song together. Now it follows up by saying that Pusha can barely contain his disgust, recounting how the statement with Def Jam played out. They wanted me to ask Kendrick to censor his verse, which of course I was never doing, he explains. And then they wanted me to take the record off. And so after a month of not doing it, Steve Golly, the lawyer over there, was like, we'll just drop the clips. But that can't work because I'm still there solo. But if they let us all go, sure enough, Def Jam eventually agreed to release the clips and drop Pusha as a solo artist as well, freeing the duo up to the shop for a new home. With a finished Clips album and plenty more music in their pockets, ultimately, Pusha says the endeavor was gratifying. It felt good to even see how other labels were buying for the project. Now, as they teased last week, with a picture in front of the label's plain insignia, they've ended up at Jay-Z's Rock Nation, where they feel fully supported and energized. I think that's the synergy, just in a rap sense, is going to speak volumes, Pusha says of their partnership. So Rock Nation picks them up after Def Jam drops them. Def Jam drops them because they did not want Pusha T and Kendrick Lamar on the song. despite the fact that this song wasn't a diss, despite the fact that there was no subs, according to Pusha T, and I'm pretty sure Pusha T would know a sub if he heard it. But that one line talking about therapy and not giving a fuck, that line really made them feel some type of way is crazy to me, because that doesn't even sound offensive. That doesn't even sound crazy at all for you to be offended. But we know what it is. Def Jam didn't want Pusha T and Kendrick Lamar together on the song. For somebody at Def Jam's team, you know, one of their lawyers telling Pusha T, can you tell Kendrick to censor his verse? And then he wasn't going to do that, obviously not. And then he tells him, you know what, just drop them from the label. If they're not going to do anything, just drop them. Seems very dramatic, seems very drastic. And it started to make me think, what relationship does Def Jam have with Drake that makes them feel like they had to do this? They had to make this decision. I don't know their current relationship now, but Layer Cohen is a very important individual when it comes to behind the scenes situations. Layer Cohen, on trying to bring Drake to Def Jam, the truth is he shook my hand. Now, this is back in 2018. He was on the Breakfast Club, had spoke to them. He had spoke on how he almost inked a deal with Drake while heading to Def Jam. In an interview with Complex back in 2010, when Cohen helmed Warner Music Group, after leaving Def Jam, the exec talked about another situation where the deal with Drake had fell through. Speaking on new artists, many people were expecting Drake to sign with Warner Music. Did it disappoint you that he ended up going with Universal Motown? So it looks like this person, and I think now they work for YouTube, they tried to sign Drake back in 2018. It didn't fall through perfectly, but you could see that Def Jam has been trying to sign with Drake, has been fond of Drake for a really long time, considering that they were trying to sign him a few years back. It only leads me to speculate that they're doing this to try to get a deal with Drake, since they weren't able to get it the first time. The music exec Cohen wasn't able to get Drake to sign back in 2018. We know that Drake ended up signing with UMG. But I feel like Def Jam is doing this so that way they could build some type of relationship or build some type of trust with Drake. Maybe if he signs with them in the near future. I mean, Drake is suing his label UMG right now, and I'm assuming that he's not going to stay with UMG after all of this is said and done. There could be labels out there doing stuff like this, like what they did to Pusha T and Clips, to try to get on Drake's good side. So that way, when he does decide to sign to somebody else, he could most likely sign to them because they've already showed some type of trust or allegiance to him. I don't respect it. I don't think it's a good look. I think Def Jam choosing the side of Drake, even though he's not even signed to them, to be honest, it doesn't really make sense to me still, because it says here that Def Jam, and it said in the article as well, that they are owned by Universal Music Group. I just don't see the point of Def Jam doing this. It says here that Def Jam Recording, also simply known as Def Jam, is an American multinational record label owned by Universal Music Group. So if they're owned by UMG, I don't know why they would do this. I just don't get it. I don't know what's the purpose. If they're owned by UMG and Drake is going against UMG, I don't see what they get out of it. I don't see what they get out of dropping Pusha T and Clips. It's not like Drake is going to go to them if they're still under UMG. At this point, who isn't under UMG? UMG owns everything, right? Am I tripping? The other speculation that I have is that Def Jam didn't want no issues with Drake. Now, this is just speculation. I'm just spitballing here. But what if Pusha T had a song with Kendrick Lamar? He had a feature with Kendrick Lamar. Def Jam is well aware that Pusha T and Kendrick Lamar are Drake's biggest ops. And even though there was probably no subliminals, what if, and I'm saying what if, Def Jam didn't want no issues with Drake at all, didn't want to be named in the lawsuit, didn't want to be caught in the crossfire between this beef, and they were respectfully asking Pusha T to take off Kendrick Lamar's feature because they were afraid that Drake was going to sue them next. I'm only guessing, because the only thing that takes me back is this part right here, where they say that UMG is a record label that is the owner of Def Jam. So that, like, again, I don't know. I don't see what the purpose of them doing this other than to avoid any confrontation that involves Drake in the near future. They mentioned right here that UMG is Def Jam's parent company as well. So I could only assume that they did this just to avoid any confrontation involving Drake. Maybe they didn't want to get sued, but who knows why they really did it. This is just the other speculation that I was thinking about last minute. But your guess is as good as mine, why they didn't want this feature out, why they didn't want to put Pusha T on the label and put this album out the way that he wanted to, the way that he intended to. Either way, I think that Def Jam was being real petty. I think it's a good thing that Roc Nation is going to take this album and promote it and push it better. I think they'll do a better job of pushing this album than Def Jam would be able to. But if you ask me, and if I was Def Jam, I'd rather have a Clips album with a Kendrick Lamar feature. And this story is bigger than Def Jam just dropping Clips and pushing from the label. It also shows you how these entities, how these labels, how these companies are working after the beef, the sides that they're choosing, the people that they're rocking with, the people that they're not afraid to cut ties with. These are the things that we don't see. And Pusha T telling us the story is letting us know that the beef is far from over. We may talk about it publicly, but there's still things behind the scenes that are happening. And it's affected more people behind the scenes than we thought. It's affecting labels and how they handle artists, and how those artists feature other artists that have problems with other artists that they fuck with. I mean, I think this is something that's happened for a really long time. I think labels and artists beefing with each other has been going on since forever. But this is to show you that the beef isn't over. Still things happening behind the scenes. And I thought this is a real important story to point out. But y'all can tell me how you feel in the comments about this, man, and how you feel about this album coming out, how you feel about Pusha T. How you feel about the Clips dropping an album? Have you heard Ace Trumpets? Have you heard Birds Don't Sing, Chains and Whips? Y'all tell me in the comments, man. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video, man. Peace. Keep it a legend.